I had always been close to my sister, Emily. Ever since we were kids, she had a way of getting what she wanted, but I never minded. She was my younger sister, and I loved her. So when she got engaged to Jason, her high school sweetheart, and started planning her dream wedding, I was genuinely happy for her. Emily wanted everything to be perfect, and I understood that. She spent hours poring over bridal magazines, flipping through countless Pinterest boards, and dreaming up the ideal day. One afternoon, as we were sitting in my living room, sipping coffee, she looked around and sighed. "This place is perfect," she said, a dreamy look in her eyes. I glanced around, confused. My house was nice, but I'd never thought of it as anything special. It was a modest 2-story home I had bought a few years ago after saving every penny from my job as a nurse. It had a spacious backyard, sure, but nothing that screamed wedding venue. "For what?" I asked, raising an eyebrow. "For my wedding!" she exclaimed, her face lighting up with excitement. "Think about it. We could set up the ceremony in the backyard, have the reception in the dining room and living room, and the photos would be amazing. Plus, it would save so much money." I hesitated. I hadn't expected her to want to use my house for something as big as her wedding. But before I could voice any concerns, Emily grabbed my hands and squeezed them, her eyes pleading. "Please, Anna. It would mean so much to me. We're already spending so much on the dress, the flowers, the food. This would really help us out." How could I say no to that? I'd always been the responsible one, the one who helped out whenever someone needed something. And it was Emily's wedding, after all. I wanted her to have the best day of her life. "Okay," I agreed, smiling despite the small knot of worry forming in my stomach. "You can have the wedding here." Emily squealed with delight and hugged me tightly. "Thank you, thank you, thank you. You're the best sister ever." I laughed, trying to shake off my unease. "Anything for you, Em." In the weeks that followed, my house was transformed. Emily brought in a wedding planner, decorators, and even a landscaper to make sure the backyard was picture perfect. The once quiet home I cherished was now a bustling hive of activity. Every room was filled with wedding supplies, and the backyard looked like something out of a fairy tale. But as the wedding drew closer, I started to notice a change in Emily. She was more demanding, more stressed, and less considerate of the fact that this was still my home. One evening, as I walked into the kitchen to grab a snack, I found her talking to the caterer. "Oh, don't worry about that room," she said, dismissing the concern about space. "Anna can just stay somewhere else for the night." I froze, a cold feeling washing over me. Stay somewhere else? When had that been decided? "Emily," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. "What do you mean, stay somewhere else?" She turned to me, a hint of annoyance in her eyes. "Oh, Anna, I meant to talk to you about that. With all the guests and everything, it would just be easier if you stayed at a hotel the night before the wedding. You understand, right?" My heart sank. This was my home. I had already sacrificed so much to make her day perfect, and now she was asking me to leave? "Emily, I thought I was going to be here to help with everything," I replied, trying to keep the hurt out of my voice. She sighed, as if I was the one being unreasonable. "Anna, please. It's just for one night. I need everything to go smoothly. Don't you want my wedding to be perfect?" I did want her wedding to be perfect, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being pushed aside. Still, I didn't want to cause any drama, so I reluctantly agreed. "Fine, I'll stay at a hotel," I said quietly. Emily's face lit up again. "Thank you. I knew you'd understand." The night before the wedding, I packed an overnight bag and left my house, feeling like a stranger in my own life. I checked into a nearby hotel, but sleep eluded me. My mind kept racing with thoughts of how everything had spiraled out of control. This was supposed to be a happy occasion, yet I felt like I was losing something important. The next morning, I woke up early and decided to head back to the house to see if I could help with any last-minute preparations. But when I arrived, I was met with a shocking surprise. The front door was locked. I fumbled with my keys, but none of them worked. Panicking, I knocked on the door, hoping someone inside would hear me. After a few moments, the door opened, and I was face to face with Emily's wedding planner. "Anna, what are you doing here?" she asked, a confused look on her face. "I live here," I replied, my voice trembling. "Why is the door locked?" "My keys don't work." She hesitated, glancing behind her as if unsure of what to say. "Emily said you wouldn't be coming back until after the wedding. She had the locks changed for security reasons." My heart dropped. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. She what? "I'm sorry," the planner said, clearly uncomfortable. "But I need to get back to work. The wedding is starting soon." She closed the door, leaving me standing on the front porch, completely stunned. I couldn't process what had just happened. Emily had actually locked me out of my own home. I wanted to scream, to cry, to do something. But all I could do was stand there, numb with disbelief. How could she do this to me? After everything I had done for her, how could she betray me like this? As the reality of the situation sank in, my shock turned to anger. I had sacrificed so much for Emily, and this was how she repaid me? I had been there for her every step of the way, and now she had taken everything from me. I tried calling her, but she didn't answer. Desperate, I called Jason, hoping he would talk some sense into her. But when he picked up, his voice was cold. "Anna, this isn't a good time," he said, clearly annoyed. "Jason, she locked me out of my own house," I exclaimed, my voice shaking with emotion. He sighed, as if I was the one being unreasonable. "Look, Emily is under a lot of stress right now. Can't you just let this go for today? It's her wedding day. Let it go." How could he ask me to let it go? "Jason, this is my home. She had no right to do this," I shouted, the anger bubbling over. He didn't respond for a moment, and when he did, his tone was icy. "Maybe it's best if you don't come today, Anna. You're just going to cause more problems." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Not only had Emily locked me out, but now Jason was telling me not to come to the wedding? The wedding that was happening in my own home? I hung up the phone, feeling completely lost. I had never felt so betrayed, so hurt. How had things gotten so bad? This was supposed to be a day of joy, but it had turned into a nightmare. As I stood there, the sounds of the wedding starting inside, I realized I had a choice to make. I could continue to be the doormat, the one who always gave in, or I could stand up for myself. Determined not to let Emily and Jason walk all over me, I decided to take action. I wasn't going to let them ruin everything I had worked so hard for. This was my home, and I had every right to be there. I marched back to the front door and pounded on it until the wedding planner opened it again. "Anna, please, you need to leave," she said, clearly distressed. "Not until I get inside my own house," I replied, my voice firm. Before she could protest, I pushed past her and walked into the living room. The house had been completely transformed. There were flowers everywhere, elegant decorations, and guests milling about in fancy clothes. It was beautiful, but all I could see was the betrayal. I spotted Emily in the dining room, looking radiant in her wedding dress. For a moment, I almost felt bad for what I was about to do. But then I remembered how she had treated me, and my resolve hardened. "Emily!" I called out, my voice cutting through the chatter. She turned to look at me, her eyes widening in surprise. "Anna? What are you doing here?" "This is my house," I said, walking toward her. "I have every right to be here." She glanced around nervously, clearly not wanting to cause a scene. "Anna, please don't do this." "Not today!" I ignored her plea. "You locked me out of my own home, Emily. After everything I've done for you, this is what you did. You changed the locks without telling me, without even asking. You uninvited me from your wedding, and now you want me to just disappear? This is my house, Emily. My home." Her face flushed with a mix of embarrassment and anger as guests began to murmur, noticing the tension. "Anna, you're ruining everything. Can't you just let me have this one day?" I felt my chest tighten as a wave of emotions threatened to overwhelm me. "I've let you have everything, Emily! I've sacrificed for you, supported you, and what have you done? You've treated me like I'm nothing. The guests were staring now, whispering amongst themselves, but I didn't care. This was my breaking point. The years of being the accommodating older sister, always giving, always putting myself last, it was too much. I couldn't take it anymore. Jason stepped in, trying to calm the situation. Anna, let's talk about this later, okay? This isn't the time or place. I shook my head, tears stinging my eyes. No, Jason, this is the perfect time. I'm not going to let you two push me around anymore. You both need to understand that this isn't just about a wedding. This is about respect, about how I've been treated. Emily's expression softened for a moment, a flicker of guilt crossing her face. But it was gone as quickly as it had appeared, replaced by stubborn determination. You're being ridiculous, Anna. You agreed to let us have the wedding here. Why can't you just be happy for me? I could feel the anger boiling up inside me, the years of pent-up frustration finally exploding. I wanted to be happy for you, Emily. But how can I be when you've taken everything from me? You've made this day all about you, without a single thought for anyone else. There was a silence in the room, the tension thick enough to cut with a knife. The wedding planner looked like she wanted to crawl under a table, and the guests were all staring at us, wide-eyed. Emily opened her mouth to respond, but I didn't give her the chance. You've gone too far this time, Emily. You've crossed a line that I can't ignore. I've always been there for you, always put you first, but not anymore. I won't let you take advantage of me any longer. With that, I turned and walked out of the house, my heart pounding in my chest. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew I couldn't stay there. I needed to get away, to clear my head, to figure out what to do next. As I drove aimlessly around town, the events of the past few hours played over and over in my mind. I couldn't believe what had happened. How had things gotten so bad between Emily and me? We used to be so close, but now it felt like we were strangers. I pulled into a quiet park, parked the car, and sat there, staring at the steering wheel. The anger had subsided, leaving a deep sadness in its place. I had lost something today, something more important than a house or a wedding. I had lost my sister. But as I sat there, I realized that I had also gained something. I had stood up for myself, finally put my own needs and feelings first. It was a strange, bittersweet feeling, but it was also empowering. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I was in control of my own life. I thought about what to do next. Going back to the house was out of the question, at least for now. I needed space, time to figure out where I stood with Emily, with Jason, with everything. I needed to reclaim my life, to find my own happiness. As I sat in the park, I made a decision. I wasn't going to let this situation break me. I had sacrificed so much for Emily, but now it was time to focus on myself. I deserved to be happy, to have a life that was about more than just taking care of others. I took a deep breath, feeling a sense of calm wash over me. I didn't know what the future held, but I knew one thing for sure: I wasn't going to be anyone's doormat anymore. A few days later, I finally returned to the house. I had spent the time away thinking about everything that had happened, and I knew I needed to face Emily. But this time, things would be different. I was no longer the older sister who would do anything to keep the peace. I was ready to stand up for myself. When I arrived, the house was eerily quiet. The wedding decorations had been taken down, and the place looked almost back to normal. But as I walked through the front door, I could still feel the tension in the air, a lingering reminder of the confrontation that had taken place. Emily was sitting in the living room, staring at her phone. She looked up when she saw me, her expression unreadable. "Anna," she said, her voice subdued. I took a deep breath, bracing myself for what I knew would be a difficult conversation. "We need to talk, Emily." She nodded, setting her phone aside. "I know." I sat down across from her, trying to find the right words. "I've been thinking a lot about what happened, and I've realized that things can't go back to the way they were. You've hurt me, Emily. More than you probably realize." Her eyes welled up with tears, and for a moment I saw a glimpse of the sister I used to know. I'm sorry, Anna. I didn't mean to hurt you. I got so caught up in everything in the wedding that I didn't stop to think about how you were feeling. I nodded, appreciating her apology, but knowing that it wasn't enough. It's not just about the wedding, Emily. It's about how you've treated me for years. I've always been there for you, always put you first, but you've taken that for granted. She looked down at her hands, tears spilling onto her cheeks. I know I've been selfish. I know I've taken advantage of you, and I'm sorry. I don't know why I did it. I guess I just always assumed you'd be there for me, no matter what. I sighed, feeling the weight of everything we had been through. I want to be there for you, Emily. But I can't keep sacrificing myself for you. I need to take care of myself too. She looked up at me, her eyes full of remorse. I understand. And I want to make things right, Anna. I don't want to lose you. Her words were sincere, but I knew that rebuilding our relationship would take time. Trust had been broken, and it wouldn't be easy to repair. But I was willing to try, as long as she was too. I don't want to lose you either, I said softly. But things need to change. We need to find a new way to be sisters, one where we respect each other and don't take each other for granted. She nodded, wiping away her tears. I want that too. I really do. In the weeks that followed, Emily and I worked on rebuilding our relationship. It wasn't easy, and there were times when the old patterns threatened to resurface. But we were both committed to making things work, and slowly, we started to find our way back to each other. I also took steps to reclaim my own life. I made time for myself, pursued hobbies that I had neglected for years, and even started dating again. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I was living for myself, not just for others. As for the house, I decided to keep it, but with boundaries. Emily was welcome to visit, but it was clear that this was my space, and she needed to respect that. It was a small but significant step in reclaiming my life. The wedding had been a turning point, a moment of reckoning that forced me to confront the dynamics that had been holding me back for years. It was painful, but it was also necessary. It taught me the importance of standing up for myself, of not letting others take advantage of my kindness. And in the end, it brought Emily and me closer together. Our relationship was still a work in progress, but it was stronger, more honest than it had ever been. We had both learned valuable lessons about respect, boundaries, and the importance of not taking each other for granted. As I looked out at the backyard one evening, the place where it had all come to a head, I felt a sense of peace. The flowers had long since wilted, and the decorations were gone, but the memories remained. They were a reminder of how far we had come, and how much stronger we were for it. For the first time in a long time, I felt truly at home, not just in my house, but in my life. And that was a feeling I would never take for granted again. Months later, Emily and I found ourselves sitting together on the porch, sipping iced tea and watching the sun set over the trees. The air was warm, and the tension that had once existed between us was now a distant memory. "Do you ever think about that day?" Emily asked suddenly, breaking the comfortable silence. I knew immediately what she was referring to. The day of the wedding, the day everything had changed. I nodded, taking a sip of my tea. "Sometimes. But not in the way you might think." She looked at me, curious. "What do you mean?" "I used to think of it as the day everything fell apart," I explained. "But now, I see it as the day everything started to come together. It was the day I finally stood up for myself, and the day we both realized that we needed to change." Emily smiled, a hint of sadness in her eyes. "I'm sorry it took something so drastic for me to see that. I wish I had been more aware, more considerate." I reached out and squeezed her hand. "We both made mistakes, Emily. But what matters is that we've learned from them. We've come out stronger on the other side." She nodded, her smile growing warmer. "Yeah, we have. And I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful for you." The sun dipped below the horizon, casting the sky in shades of pink and orange. It was a beautiful sight, one that seemed to mirror the new beginning we had found in our relationship. As we sat there, enjoying the quiet, I realized how far we had come. The anger, the hurt, the resentment, it had all been replaced by understanding, respect, and a renewed sense of sisterhood. We weren't the same people we had been before the wedding. We were stronger, wiser, and more connected. We had found our way back to each other, not just as sisters, but as friends. And in that moment, I knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, we would face them together. We had weathered the storm, and now, we were ready for whatever life had in store. The future was bright, and for the first time in a long time, I felt truly hopeful. Emily and I were on the right path, and nothing could take that away from us. As the stars began to twinkle in the night sky, I leaned back in my chair, feeling content and at peace. The house, the wedding, the confrontation, it was all behind us now. What lay ahead was a new chapter, one filled with possibility and promise. And I knew, without a doubt, that we were ready for it. Looking back on everything that had happened, I realized that the most important lesson I had learned was the value of self-respect. For too long, I had put others' needs before my own, thinking that it was the right thing to do. But in the process, I had lost myself. The events surrounding Emily's wedding had been a wake-up call, forcing me to confront the unhealthy dynamics in our relationship and in my own life. It had been painful, but it had also been necessary. I had learned to set boundaries, to stand up for myself, and to prioritize my own well-being. It wasn't easy, and there were times when I doubted myself, but in the end, it made me stronger. And as for Emily, she had learned the importance of gratitude, of not taking the people she loved for granted. Our relationship was better than it had ever been, built on a foundation of mutual respect and understanding. Life would continue to bring challenges, as it always does, but I knew that we were better equipped to handle them now. We had faced the storm and come out the other side, stronger and more united. As I moved forward with my life, I carried these lessons with me, knowing that they would guide me in the years to come. I was no longer the person I had been before, and for that, I was grateful. The future was bright, and I was ready to embrace it, one step at a time.